crazy. So I got a pretty good story about raising the money with friends, family, silent investors, and then also just yesterday we executed this loan for uh it's a little over $1 million for both between like the loans that we got this year from US Bank and then Legacy Bank. So it's exciting stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah.
And
What's going on, Sean?
Greg just jumped on. It's my business partner, Greg, former Green
Hey, it's a
Beret.
pleasure to meet you, Greg. How you doing?
Good, man. Nice to meet you, Sean. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, so you're out in Europe right now, huh?
Yep, doing the whole expat thing, turning my
Oh,
kids
very
into
nice.
Euro trash. Yeah,
Into Euro
yeah.
trash.
Totally, totally. Well, I hope it's nice out there, and I know it's probably a little late out there, so sorry about that.
Oh no, it's good. It's just the kick in
It's,
the pants I need. I'm trying to get my clock adjusted to late evenings. So
Nice,
it's
nice.
something we
happy to
get
be.
to it's something we get to work through. So this is actually going to be the first recording. We'll decide what order we're going to launch these, but this will be the first recording of the podcast. We've been doing 33 newsletters so far. Not all of them have been uh veteran entrepreneurs. Some of them have been like entrepreneurial tips and stuff. But yeah, we've been doing that for I guess 7, 8 months, whatever 33 weeks works out to be. And so we're like, if we're already doing these conversations, we might as well have the conversation as a raw format that people can enjoy, have it as a podcast, and then we can turn
Yeah,
that into a newsletter later, double down on the content. And people just really enjoy, especially veterans, love seeing other veterans, what they're doing. So like this is a perfect platform to give people like you the spotlight you need to get some shit going. And then also hopefully inspire other veterans to be like, oh, this guy started a brewery. That sounds kind of cool. I want to learn more about that. I just give people
yeah.
different ideas of what they can get into. It doesn't have to be get out, go work for Amazon or some shit for the next 10 years until you can fully retire, whatever that actually means.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I mean, yeah, I know that, it's a hard, as you guys know, it's a hard transition, no matter what you do, and also from the military. So, and I mean, it's the Wild West out there. There's nobody that's going to hold your hand through it. What's nice about, what's nice about jumping into a job or anything like that, or an employer is, they'll take care of you. They'll just like the military. It's like, all right, do this, do this. They'll withhold all your taxes for you. They'll give you benefits, so that way you don't have to really think about that stuff. And it's a blessing because at least you have money to put food on the table and put some gas in your car, right? So,
Hmm.
and also, I've had a lot of great mentors, and just people who have been there and done that, got the t-shirt for it. Those are the best people to listen to and talk to, and they're like, yeah, like there's a point like where you got to make money, and a lot of times companies, when you first start them, they just don't make money for a long time. Uber is a great example. Amazon's a great example. A little bit of an extreme example, right? Of losses over the years, and then start to gain some profitability. But a lot of the guys that gave me some good advice were like, whatever it is you want to do, you want to get into beer, I'd recommend that you go and work for a brewery, because you're going to get not only
Hmm.
like money, and a paycheck, but you're also going to gain, just observing like how the business works. And they said that's true for anything, whether you want to make toothpicks for a living and start up a toothpick business, or, framing, construction, whatever it is, a website, a podcast, anything like that. It's like, a lot of these things, I mean, if you look at the history of it, people have done it successfully, and there's always room to improve it, because people's wants, needs, and desires are considered to be unlimited. When I heard that in business school, I about fell over. But I also was like, that makes a lot of sense. You can always improve something, and just because you're jumping into something that, from a brewery standpoint might be saturated, you can improve upon the product or the service, and you could still make it successful. But it's kind of a give and take between working for somebody and then also making that transition to, be the employer and then make it happen. Because when I first got out in 2015, yeah, went to business school, the GI Bill paid for that. So I at least had some income coming in. And then there's a little bit of like a pension from the military that helps out as well. And then, but you're like, okay, but I was pouring all that money into this startup, and I still had to go take jobs with other companies, whether it was like
Hmm.
coaching or consulting or whatever. So those were some very, very busy years right at the beginning. And then I was able to fully let that go probably three 3 to 4 years into this business startup.
And how did you make the decision to like, all right, I'm making enough money? What did you have some metric? You're like, I'm making at least 2/3 of what I was getting outside of that, or was it just like it feels good right now? Let's do this.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question right there, right? My because like the hard thing too psychologically is a company, and you could see this by looking at any company. If you look at a public company and look at their financials or anything, you always got this going on, in terms of revenue. You'll make maybe a great quarter or maybe a great year, but then the next year, the pandemic might hit, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like, so I've been to answer your question, like I've been moldable to how things are going currently, while stacking opportunities, kind of in, the batter's box, and also kind of stashing away like opportunities in case I need to exercise on them. But I went fully into this when I started to see like, okay, like our revenue got to a certain marker, and I knew what our expenses were. And so, I mean, I'm not a I'm not a rich man either. It's like we've got employees that we paid out $250,000 last year in payroll, and I didn't make more than probably like 40,000 last year from this company. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's enough to kind of like, again, like keep the lights on, keep the gas going. But what's great about that too is like it's all moldable, it's all adaptable, because with I obviously could pay myself more and benefit from that, but we pay all of our employees 100% employer paid healthcare. We work with the state with a pension plan for them, so that way automatically deducts a portion of that into that savings account for them. And then we have all these other ancillary benefits like commission on sales,
Oh,
tips,
nice.
a few other structures that like really it sets them up for success. So I mean, everybody in the company gets paid more than me, um, so but that's how it kind of works. You have to, they're the ones coming here every day driving the innovation of the company alongside of me too. And then as we keep expanding, you'll add more employees, you'll keep expanding, and you'll keep going. And if you look
Hmm.
at maybe even the CEO of Costco, if you looked at um, his salary, it's not much.
No.
There's a lot of companies out there where the CEO gets paid a ton, but there's also a lot of companies like Amazon. Jeff Bezos, if you look at his salary, I think it's like 80 grand. It's always been that way, which is it's an interesting thing to be like, all right, I'm gonna separate from what's safe and what an employer can provide me, and then what the company that I started can provide me. And it's a hard thing to wrangle. You kind of just have to be open to how the market's doing, how your company's doing as well.
Yeah, and bringing in other forms of compensation too. Having a W-2 salary isn't necessarily a great thing, and a lot of the wealthy and the experienced entrepreneurs will recognize that W-2s are a liability essentially towards you, because that's all out in front of the open for the government to look at and tax you on and criticize you over. Um, where a lot of other things, other forms of compensation, like buying yourself a company car, paying for your health insurance, paying for these other things that you're gonna buy anyway, but
Mhm.
now they're tied under the business, they're now a write-off, and so you're not getting taxed on the income and then putting it on into something else. You're just saying, nope, the company's buying it,
Mhm.
and it skirts around the taxes.
Actually, I mean, that's a good point too, because I mean, if you look at a lot of interviews by a lot of successful entrepreneurs, who they really keep close are, bankers, lawyers, and accountants, right? And I mean, honestly, I wish this was taught in school more often, but it's just not. Because our world really does revolve around those areas of, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that's just, you just got to be familiar with that, be familiar with law, be familiar with how banks fund companies, and also be aware of like taxes too, and also like company structures. And so our company structure is an LLC, and so it's technically a partnership. We're taxed as an S corp though,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm active in the company, so I pay myself a payroll. So I do pay myself. I pay myself, but then also I pay payroll taxes, which will be a little bit more expensive. But as the company keeps growing, really what you're looking at is the profit of it. So for me, I own over 50% of the company. So in theory, I may only pay myself 50 grand a year this year or around that, which is enough for me to be, like, okay, like our family's good,
Mm-hmm.
pouring all my effort into growing the company. Last year's revenue, we did well. We did a little over 700,000, and then this year, I think we're going to try to get to about 1.2 to 1.4 million with this new location. Um, but really, the driving factor is profitability for a business owner. And so, with an LLC, at the end of the year, you can also do it, I believe, monthly, but for sure by the end of the year, if we make 1.2 million and our expenses to include my salary, which has already been taxed
Mm-hmm.
as an S corp, if we make 100 grand in profit, then really, I'm going to pay myself 50 grand of that because I own, 50% of the company over that. And then I'll pay the other 50% to all the other silent investors of the company. But my taxes on that 50 grand of quote profit, it's a different tax bracket. Actually, it's less than payroll taxes that we would have to provide. So
Mm-hmm.
as the company keeps growing, and that's why I understand why a lot of these CEOs or founders, they don't pay themselves
Oh,
much.
I'll just take the $1 salary. I'm an
Yeah, it's
honorable
like I'll
person.
take that, and even more so if you want to take it to another level, you can even collateralize that and just live off of like bank loans as you keep growing the company and collateralize your equity in the company. Um, and it just takes it to a whole new level that we're not there yet. But what it is it's just an interesting thing because and the reason I say this is like I'm not trying to evade taxes or anything
No.
like that. What I'm trying to do is just make sure our company survives because I learned in business school that I think it's the statistic is about 95 to I think 99% of startups from when they're hey, I'm going to start up, uh, 5 to 10 years later, 99% of them won't be there. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's what's interesting though is there's another benchmark, and that's it just depends on what you want to do with it because there's a lot of successful companies that have been around for decades that are solo entrepreneurs or they have 5 employees or 10 employees or whatever, mom and pop shops, but your benchmark is going to try to be like if you can get your revenue to about 1 million a year, and you want to have like an enterprise of some kind of like product or service, it's kind of the benchmark to say like okay, that's you guys look like you're going to stick and you're also going to survive. But at any point in that time, and I mean, we're no different. Pandemic hit, 50% of our retail revenue was gone overnight in 2020. We had to really start to leverage distribution sales to keep the lights on here, to keep our employees, make sure they had a job. I fought tooth and nail to make sure that they were stable and work with the state, work with the feds, because like money going back and forth. I mean, beer, the federal government gets a lot of money from our beer sales. It's kind of like gasoline, which is kind of funny. But we pay excise taxes on beer. Every gallon that we produce goes $3.50 of that goes to the federal government. Well, every barrel of that, 31 gallons, and about the same goes to the state of California. And then you have all these other, I mean, the taxes when you start to like list them down. San Diego County equipment tax on the equipment that produces income, that's an annual hit, 1,000 or 2,000 right there. Or organic certificate, that's paid to a private company monitored by the USDA, so we have to keep that in alignment. The fees just to keep an alcohol license, sales taxes. It just, when you look at the cash flow of our company, money going in, money coming out, it's currently 50 to 60,000 bucks every single month, and a lot of those go towards taxes. But there's again like understanding taxes and understanding
Mm-hmm.
law, really from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I mean, we're shelling it out, which is like, yeah, we're checking the box legally, and we're supporting our local government, our state government, and our federal government. And then on the other side of that, though, you've got all these other competitors, and customers you gotta keep satisfied, and competitors that they don't want you in business. It's a ruthless industry, beer, but every single market, every single industry is kind of similar to that. It's almost like the odds are definitely stacked against you for success, and so you have to manage money without emotion.
Hmm.
That's really a big thing that I've had to learn, because I came from a poor family. I didn't come from I came from uh poor class, going into the Navy, and then learn through school, and then learn through the military, money management. And then this was kind of the icing on the cake, where it was like, okay, get thrown to the fire and then figure out how to make it all work together. But I got to say, it's kind of nice, because we've been managing it pretty well, and we've been growing very well and successfully since 2017.
And it's you and your wife started it, correct?
Yeah, so we originally started it. So I started the company with now this is 2014. I filed the articles of organization with the state for the LLC. So that's when the
And you were
company
still in the Navy at the time?
still in the Navy. So yeah, that was I was on. I think I was finishing up my last deployment with SEAL Team 5, and then I was like, okay, start the company. When I get out in 2015, we'll do the rest. But then 2016, we signed the lease here, and even when we started the company, there were a couple members that I was like, okay, like, and this is what I recommend too for anybody starting a company, is just try to think about the equity structure of it that makes the most sense, and also try to plan for the worst case scenario, right? If it makes sense to do 50-50, sure. If it makes sense to do 60-40-20, sure. We actually itemize that by hours in the week, and then capital that was put in, and risk, and you really just have to figure all that stuff out. And it's also part of your market capitalization table from the very beginning. It's like, all right,
Hmm.
I'm going to put in everything that I have currently, that I've saved for the last 11 years being in the Navy. So I'm going to put all that in, right? Which comes out to like 200 grand. So it's like, I'm going to shove that into it. Okay. And then I'm going to work every week at least 40, turns out 80, but I'm going to do that. Okay. So for me, my equity should be, about here, right? So we started with my equity up in like the 60-70% range. And then the members that we had with the company, it's all negotiable when you start a company. So and as long as you can be like, okay, like, this is how we're going to do it. And you have to file these documents with the state. So it's like, okay, we're going to create this company with an LLC. It's called an operating agreement. So, you start the company with that first, like, okay, articles of organization. Now we're an LLC. Now we get a federal tax ID number with the IRS. Okay, those are tied together. And then here's our company organization structure with the state of California. Okay, great. And you can be a single member LLC, or you can be a multiple or single member managed LLC, single member LLC, multiple manager LLC. And those things can change over time as well. But you start with that organization, with that operating agreement, clearly lays it out. And with the individuals that I had that jumped on board, so, some were guys that I work with in the Navy, some were guys that, they had expertise in certain fields, and it was good. We started up, we got the place started and up and running. And we had a legal structure where it was like, okay, you guys are going to get 5% equity or 10% equity, and you're going to work for this amount of time. And then at this point, for free, that's where your equity
The
comes
sweat
in,
equity.
sweat equity. And then at this time, if the company's doing well, then we'll transition you from working for free to, working for either hourly or a salary. Now it turns out that, like, this is what I recommend to anybody is always plan for the worst case scenario. Like, it's going to take twice as long, and it's going to take twice as much money to do, even though you plan very critically to do it. And so we put some, and again, like, it's good because the guys that started the company with me, they've all moved into a silent investor role, and it's good. You hear horror stories about lawsuits and everything like that.
Hmm.
We haven't had those, and it's not like we've had sunshine and rainbows this entire process. It's just not true. But at least like we can all come together and say, hey, okay, we're going to move this direction. Appreciate all the effort you did here. Keep your equity, you vested it, and we're going to make you a silent. You're not going to be a manager of the company, but you'll move into this role. You'll collect profits later on, and then those are hard decisions to make because you get hit with problems in a company all the time, and so um, and also delays too. I mean, technically, those guys, their contract kind of was like up, and they were still kind of like adding things to the company, and that was more on me. I didn't really. This is my first company, my only company. Sure, I had a bachelor's degree in business while I was in the Navy. Did that, with tuition assistance while still serving, and then did the MBA. So kind of had like a broad awareness of like what we needed to do. But you hit these hurdles, and you don't have any money, and um, so it was like, okay, guys, like don't worry about it. Like we've got employees to do this. We're gonna hunker down here. We're gonna move this here. So it's just constantly in motion. And also too, when you don't have any money, because we started in 2017. That first year of revenue, we probably made like 170, 180 grand, but with a loss. So it
Hmm.
was the economics of our company. Our cost of goods and services were just so high, and customers weren't willing to pay a premium for our product above what the average market rate was for beer sales or anything like that.
But the good news is,
And
companies are given what is it, like a 3 year or 5 year leeway with claiming a loss. So you might as well take advantage of those
totally,
losses anyway. Hey,
totally.
we're not paying taxes at the company this year because we took a 30K loss and we're going to carry that forward into next year.
Yep,
Um,
yep,
so yeah,
yep,
you really don't even want to show a profit for the first few years because you're just leaving money on the table. The government says we're giving you this grace period. We're just going to expect you to be losing money for the first few years. You don't
yep.
have to pay taxes if you're losing money.
Yep, yep. And what's kind of nice too is, having good CPAs and accountants and bookkeepers
Hmm.
set that up at the beginning.
Right.
Like if you don't know QuickBooks, it's kind of an animal. It is what it is. But pay the money, pay the monthly rate with a good firm that will do those taxes right and do those tax returns right and your submissions to the state. Because like the government's going to take your taxes from normal business operations anyway, all those taxes I mentioned before. And then at the end, if you have a profit, they'll definitely take a portion of those taxes. There is grace period, but what's kind of nice about losses, it's a double-edged sword. Those
Hmm.
losses will carry over year by year, and then eventually, when you are profiting, like if let's just say like this year we profit two, three, $400,000, I can technically use all the losses I had from all the other years and not have to pay any taxes this year on any profits that I make. And so
Hmm.
but that all has to be accounted for, and it has to be by the book with the IRS too.
Yeah.
And so, having that documentation is important.
And then there's also the thing of, as a business owner, you want to show as little profit as possible so you're not paying as much taxes. But then when I remember you mentioned earlier that you're going to be getting some money. It's like, well, when you have to go to the bank to get a loan and you've been showing 5 years of minimal profit or even losses, they're like, maybe you're not the greatest investment for
That's
us to be putting the loan in. So it's a
yeah,
constant game of how much profit do I show if I know I'm going to be needing a loan, or if you're looking to sell the business, you again need to show as much profit as possible with as few expenses. And
yep,
then versus the other years, we're like, no, we want to expense as much stuff as possible and show as
yep.
little profit. So you really need to have that long-term strategic plan of what you're going to be doing with the business, so you can make those literally years in advance.
Oh God, you're absolutely right. Because it's like a bank, again, a bank's not going to fund you typically. I should say this typically. And what's interesting about this process of like capital raising, we've raised millions over the years to get our company to where it's at. And what's kind of nice is it's kind of an even balance. Like all the money it's not like we've raised like 10 million and only made 5 million in revenue, right? It's like it's actually pretty well balanced at this point. The money that we've actually raised, we've been able to back it with the revenue to about equal. But what's interesting is, every year at this point forward, it'll be kind of that scale that tips where it's like, yeah, we're making millions, and we're not having to raise any more money because the business is kind of off to the races, and it's kind of a self-sustaining entity. But when you go to investors, I mean, I've pitched to hundreds of investors since we started. Because as another good mentor told me, he's like, you will always be raising money. Just accept that, always.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very rare that and even if your company from day one is profitable and you're just plowing those profits back in and you still have money left over, he's like, yeah, like, but at the same time, there's going to be a point where it makes more sense to use public money from a bank. You'll save more money by doing that, not having to risk all those profits of the company to keep scaling forward. Financing it's an interesting thing, because it can really help you, and also taxes, and as the money starts to multiply, you just have to move it in the right direction. But for us, I can only speak from our experience, because we were showing losses. We would pitch to investors and we set an evaluation, and there's a lot of metrics that you can set your evaluation for your company at. You can just go onto Investopedia and say like, okay, well, what's my industry? What's a typical multiple for revenue? Or a discounted cash flow DCF model, projected for 5 years, 10 years. Like, hey, if you invest this here, we're going to make this. There's discounts rates. There's all these equations that you can do. Like at the end of the day, you can set it to whatever you want. But the give and take between an investor, he may just come back and say, all right, well, you say your evaluation's 10 million, but I don't believe you, and I'll cut that in half. I don't want 10%, I want 20% for the money that you're asking me to give you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's constant, with anybody that you raise money from. So you can quantify as much as you possibly can what you believe your evaluation is. But what's kind of nice about the market is, and just people in general, is it'll self-correct itself, just kind of like a capitalistic market, right? A free market will always correct itself with prices and costs, as long as there's not a monopoly, because people want to bargain, because people are always questioning the value of something. And it's like, hey, like, yeah, it's a constant negotiation. So what you got to try to do as a business owner is try to maintain at least control of your company. Just try to at least maintain control. That's why it's very important to understand which legal structure that you're going to create the company as. And with an LLC, typically, because it's ruled by pretty big just legislation, as long as you have the majority ownership, then you'll always have majority control. But that's also not always the case. You can structure it to where you give up more than that and also maintain control of it by being the manager of the LLC as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen companies do this very successfully too. They may raise $20 million, give 51% of their company to a venture capital firm, and but they still maintain at least some kind of control, and also voting rights, and all of these things that are important when making big decisions in a company. But for us, it's like, hey, our valuation, we first set our first evaluation at about 3.25 million when we first started capital raising in 2019. Gave up about 19%.
Was that with like a 3x multiplier, or was that what you
Yeah.
guys considered you guys were doing at the moment?
Yeah, so we were at that time, I think we were doing, I think what we're trying to do is do a discounted cash flow model where it was like, okay, if you invest this here, here's what we anticipate our growth trajectory to be. And we took all the revenues from those 10 years and then brought them back to kind of a net present value. And that was kind of like our evaluation. Again, you can look this up.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly easily, but the hard thing about projections and evaluations is,
Very
nobody
subjective.
nobody can tell what the future will be, right?
Yeah, I got a magic 8 ball. I can figure this out.
Yeah, you may project that, but in reality, what happens is you might go that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and it happens all the time. And a savvy investor would definitely see that as well. You can also get an evaluation with the IRS as a specific process for that. That's mostly, from what I understand, just based on like tax returns, though,
Hmm.
just to kind of audit yourself. Um, so, but for me, it's like, hey, let's set our evaluation here. The investors, most investors believed in it, and that's where like you kind of have to negotiate and stand your ground and say, no, I think our competitive advantages. We're the only organic brewery in San Diego. We're veteran owned. Our trajectory every year is 40% growth realized. So that's our trajectory that it has been. Just this last year, our revenue from 2020 to 2023 was a 50.1% gain. Okay, so even more than what we were projecting back then. So
Hmm.
you have to kind of stay on point with those milestones and set those milestones realistic too, because the worst thing you can do is like try to raise money the first time and then you set your evaluation so high and so unobtainable. You may get the capital at that first round, but if you're not executing on those milestones, you probably won't be able to get more capital after that. And especially if you're a losing company, if you can't go to private equity or angel investors to get the capital, if they're saying no, you try to go to a bank and you only show like losing returns but no track record, you're not going to be able to get capital from them either.
Hmm.
It's a very tricky thing back and forth. Again, it's all a negotiation, but every round that we've done, we've raised our evaluation slightly. And again, it's just we just set the model. It's like, hey, this kind of cash flow model. Even the capital that we raised last year was a combination of equity, and every time you raise equity, you'll dilute people, but you'll
Hmm.
you'll raise it a little bit more. Like this year, it's like 5 million, 5.25 million. So we try to keep ramping it up because the people that bought in early on, they need a good deal, and so that they want to maintain a little bit more equity, so they'll get diluted a little bit less than people coming in, later on
Yeah.
at the stage.
So this knowledge you have of, business and investing and structuring the business. I know you said you got your undergrad in business. You have your MBA. How much of this was School of Hard Knocks? How much of it was intrinsic interest and knowledge from before even getting your bachelor's? How much it was actually equated to going to school? Because I know like Greg went to UNC and he's like, it was a good experience. Do I need it? Do I actually rely on that to move forward? Maybe, maybe not. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on MBAs and learning business.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a very this is what I think. I think if you can have education and experience combined, I think you're going to be unstoppable. And the experience doesn't have to be what you've already had. The experience can and should be for sure the effort that you put into the company. Hyper focusing on making that thing work. That's it at all costs. Put the blinders on and just do it. That'll gain all that experience. And these experiences that I've had, because I never started a company, didn't really know anything about wealth coming from a poor family. But I had all these other great values from the family and then also from the SEAL teams in the Navy. And then jumping into entrepreneurship is just adaptability. So, but the great thing about education is if it got paid for by the Navy and then the GI Bill, so it
Hmm.
was kind of a no-brainer. It was basically it wasn't free, nothing's free, but that paid for it. But there were also plenty of people that took on student loans to get that education, but why the education was powerful was it really just gives you the high level view of your company. Okay, so it's like you take operations in business school and you have an awareness about inventory control. You take accounting, you take finance. You just have a general quick awareness about like, oh, like that's how the big picture of that is. But the experience is the most valuable because when you jump into entrepreneurship, you can't just it can't just be all high level. You got to go all the way to the ground with it. And with school, they kind of just touch on little areas between those two extremes. With the experience, you master all of it, and it's usually
Hmm.
through a lot of mistakes and a lot of failures too, where you're like, okay, I made this bet, I made this assumption, didn't work. cost me a lot of money. That's on me. I will never do that again. I will set a system up to make sure that doesn't happen again. And then also too, like, you'll get a letter from some kind of government entity that's like, you need to be paying this for this, and you can't do anything about it. So you're like, well, I didn't anticipate that. So, okay, that's going to go on the calendar. Going to be very organized about that. I will anticipate that cost next year. So it's like clockwork. Okay. And again, it's hard to know all of it, even if you do have 20 years of experience in one industry. You have to kind of like wrangle all these things. Like, that's why school is really good, because you get a general awareness of marketing, you get a general awareness of new product development, you get a general awareness of creativity and innovation. You get a history of how other people have been there and done that, and you see what their thought process was, you see what the outcome was based on the inputs of what they did. And of course, like, but that's also not going to guarantee that you have success, because some people don't have money to pay for college. Some people don't have the opportunity, or they don't have, the grades or the focus or whatever. There may be a hurdle in front of that. You could still make a company very successfully if work tirelessly 12 hours a day to just master whatever that is. And what's interesting too is, like, I heard this, like, if you're struggling to raise capital, or you're kind of like weary about doing it, um, a lot of investors, they don't invest to make a return. That blew my mind. That blew my mind when I heard that from a mentor of mine. I was like, because I would assume that, like, that's why people do it. And they're like, no, it's not. Like, of course, everybody wants to get a profit and a return from something. But I mean, this world is so broad. Business and the economy is so broad. They may not be looking at it just for the money return. They may be looking at it from a completely different angle that you wouldn't even understand, or you wouldn't even know. It's like, hey, I want to invest into this brewery because I own a piece of this canning company over here. So I'm not really looking at the returns of you guys. I'm really looking at you guys buying from those guys, and those guys making the return, and then maybe I'll invest more later on. I was like, oh wow, that takes it to a
Playing
whole
chess when
new
you're
level.
playing checkers.
Yeah, and then you're like, "Wow, God, I feel like I'm the little boy at the big boys table, right?" So I'm like, okay, well, and then what's interesting is, like, every time you put yourself into a scenario to grow, either yourself or the company, or try to raise capital or whatever it is, you're vulnerable. So your ego has to be very low, and you always have to be like, you're like, hey, like, I and that's also something psychologically that's very, very hard to do, especially, like, with you as well. Like, you had an established career before, and then you're almost going back to level zero. You
Hmm.
get prestige, and this could be for any job. If you're in corporate America and you're a VP, you get very used to, the infrastructure that you have, the the supplies and the resources that you have, and you make decisions based off of that. Then you jump into entrepreneurship, then it's all on you. You don't have those resources, you don't have those systems in place, and then you have to work from the ground back up to get there. And that takes, what it does, it takes you telling yourself, like, I'm not I can't just act like I'm at this, like, prestige level when talking to people, or I can't just fall in line with that um, that rhythm of thinking, and I can't just fall in that rhythm of, like, there's certain times and places where you have to wear different hats, but you have to just assume that you're like, hey, listen, like, if you're going to make the company successful, you have to forget the salary that you had, you have to forget the opportunity, the growth, the bonuses, the lush lifestyle, the first class flights. You have to just forget about that stuff and be like, for better or for worse, I am going to focus on this thing, and just do it. Okay.
Long-term wealth versus having all the nice creature comforts.
And it's a hard thing for every single person to kind of mentally overcome. I think that's where mental toughness comes in, because if you just make that choice, then what you'll do is you're not going to make an excuse. You're going to be open to talking to people that know more than you, and and you don't know more than them, and you are naive to it. You're going to keep that door open to communication with somebody else who knows more than you do about something. Learn from it, not posture. and be able to incorporate that and move forward. And surprisingly, a lot of people do want you to be successful as long as your ego is down and your heart is open and your mind is open to like basically fixing the mistakes that you currently have. Because you can't, yeah, like if something goes wrong, um, we all need help. We all need
Mm-hmm.
a team. We all need partnerships. We all need, and that happens when you're just open and honest. But if you're too egoic and you don't think that you should be doing it, or you think you know better than somebody else, um, trust me, like I've seen it with myself. I've seen it with a lot of other companies that have failed around us. And it's just, it's a hard thing to see because even if you just be vulnerable just a little bit, you'll get the resources that you want. You'll just have to be open to learning.
Yeah. So I have to bring it over to the seal side because everyone's going to want to hear the seal stories. On
Totally.
your website, you're out in, it was Iraq, right? And you just wanted that cold beer.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
obviously, general order number one's in effect, so they're not handing out beers unless you want to,
Totally,
duels, uh,
totally.
near beer. So did you have, the hops and the barley and all the other stuff sent out to you? Did you have someone mail it to you? Did you find that stuff out there and you just go into one of the village
Yeah,
markets and buy
yeah,
stuff?
yeah. So it was me and me alone, for sure. And what's funny is yeah, like technically, because there's no alcohol in yeast, there's no alcohol in barley, there's no alcohol in hops, and obviously water. So I got all those ingredients shipped over to me and a book on how to make beer, and I fermented it. Yeah, this is my third deployment to Iraq, and like it was pretty calm at that point. Things were starting to calm down. We were doing some direct action raids during the nighttime, sleeping during the day. It was in Ramadi. We're on Shark Base, and it was like, yeah, just a nice little rhythm. There'd be some little things that pop up here or there, but nothing too crazy. And I knew that I was going to be transitioning at some point, and from the experience of like being a SEAL, I mean, you've seen how much planning goes into just one mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like 100 slides, and you're just like, I hope I remember all of this. Maybe, but
What was that third LZ that we're supposed to possibly go to if the other ones don't go through?
yeah, exactly. But the good thing about that is like the same parallel can be transitioned over to entrepreneurship. Aim small, miss small. Plan as much
Mm-hmm.
as you possibly can, but we all know that once you get out there and get into the fight, you rely more on contingencies and training beforehand before you step out there. So that's one good thing that's really helped out with entrepreneurship is critical planning, but then also being adaptable and contingency plans. But yeah, that first round, I was like, because I knew that I wanted to do something, right? That was kind of the like the SEAL career was awesome, and I was like, okay, great. And I did that for 11 years, but this was like my third deployment. I was around that, like I'd say like yeah, like actually that was like my sixth year in the Navy. And then yeah, had the ingredients shipped out, read the book. I thought it might have been beer. I didn't have enough knowledge or equipment to actually measure if there was alcohol in it.
How'd it taste?
Like shit. It was not that good. It was just like,
What was it, like a
oh,
lager or something?
yeah, it was just like it was technically a Hefeweizen. And so I had some sanitation stuff out there, and that, we make award-winning beer now, so I compare it to that, and I'm like, well, you got to start somewhere, and it tastes like a typical like first batch of homebrew that you'd ever make. It's not something that would make you sick, and also like people were drinking, people could drink that thing. It was like, yeah, that tastes like something, and then so we didn't know if there was anything in it like alcohol or whatever, but I fell in love with it and I was like, okay, like this is going to be it. Let's go back. And then got some shore duty and then like started to really just develop the business plan for years while I was still in. So it's kind of like that also is the same thing too, where it's like, I'm employed with the Navy. They're kind of, they're paying and I'm paying them, with my time, but I'm also in addition to doing what they're asking, in the wee hours of the night, planning whatever the next stage will be. And so, yeah, so that's where like, that's kind of where the start of it was, where it's like, have an employer, start to develop the plan. And then when you're ready, if you could stay employed and launch the company, Highly recommend that. I just, for any entrepreneur, I say, like, don't give up, the golden egg until you know definitively that things are going the right way. And they say this, like, this is kind of a depressing statistic, but they do say that it takes about 10 years to kind of get something like right in terms of a business. Can it happen sooner? For sure. Will it fail before 10 years? Statistically, sure. Yeah. But that, what that does is that anchors your, I would say that anchors your assumption, because the worst thing is like trying to expect something to succeed very fast and then mentally getting kind of like debilitated when these outcomes don't reach your expectations. So
Well,
set that.
it's like buds,
Yeah.
when we do the conditioning runs with you. I know you mentioned you did a short tour. You mean being a buds instructor. I remember the conditioning runs with you. And I don't remember the retired Master Chief's name, but he's always like, every time when you go for these runs, you want to imagine that this conditioning run is gonna be the longest one of your life. And then when it ends up shorter, it's better. And I
Yep.
always did the exact opposite. I'm like, we're definitely stopping at the demo pits on this run. There's no way we're going to State Beach on this one. And then we go past it. Fuck. Like I
Yeah.
was just always mentally letting myself down. Maybe that made me a mentally resilient person, because I was just like always let down with how much longer we were running. But it just build that adversity into your brain, and you eventually succeed.
Yeah, I honestly had the same when I was going through buds. I had the same mentality too. When you're standing there on the beach ready for like a 2 mile swim, you're like, I think this is the day that's going to get canceled. I hope that it's today. They're actually late. Like, oh, this might actually happen. And it never did. And so I do think that there's a little bit of resiliency that builds from that, for
Yeah,
sure.
and then instead, Glownkowski comes out and says, "Water's 70, 71, so take your wetsuits off." It just gets worse. Just keep piling the shit on shit.
Oh God. What's so funny about that too is yeah, like that training pipeline, when you go back and become an instructor, you just see that it's a schoolhouse. And these things are like what's kind of cool about seeing that is like they're designed, because when you go through, right, like you're just trying to survive, and again, parallel to entrepreneurship, you jump into something, it's the first thing, you're the student. And I was in the same boat in buds, and you're like, holy crap, this is chaos, this is crazy. Then you have an instructor staff for buds, also other established entrepreneurs that have gone through it, and then they're putting you, like, they see that you're going through some of these things, but it's all very calculated too, which is very fascinating. Everything by design. Some things are kind of like, oh, a mistake happened there or there, but I mean, that's a very, very small portion of the training pipeline for SEAL training. And it's all meant to build all these different things like mental resiliency, strength and conditioning. But it does really set you up really well, surprisingly, when you do go overseas and you're like, man, I am in a battle rhythm. And that battle rhythm was pounded into you, and then you're like,
Hmm.
holy smokes, like that's how that works. And then you feel like you're like surprised, like, and somebody looks at you and they're like, that's how it works. And you're like, man, because those lessons are really good. The most painful lessons, whether it's SEAL training or entrepreneurship, those things stick with you. And, it does make you mentally resilient, where you're like, I don't want to feel that pain again.
Hmm.
And that was a good parallel between that. Also is also in general military boot camp too. You make a mistake, it's not you that just pays, it's everybody else that pays. And that parallel goes into entrepreneurship. If and the weight of it, the pressure of it, it's like, if I don't make this, here's the thing, you got to make choices, right? And you're not going to make a choice right. But what the good thing about SEAL training and then boot camp and like general military training is, it's like just that you have the understanding that it's not just going to affect you. That's it. It's going to affect everybody in your company. And then that kind of raises your consciousness too, to be like, oh yeah, it's not just about me. Because I mean, we're all born as babies, and then you kind of go through and the development of your body and your brain, it kind of naturally wires you at the beginning of your life to, you don't have the big wider perspective because you're young. You don't have, you're still developing, and you're still kind of like self-centered. You think that
Hmm.
things are like more like, why is this happening to me? And that's just really, in my experience, that's really just not how it works. I think the world and the universe, number one, you ask for it by going to SEAL training, right? It's like, I want this. And you get everything handed to you to make you develop into what you think that's going to be, right? And it's kind of the same thing too. It's like the lessons come your way, and they are, if you choose that path of facing those problems, going through that adversity, you just you start to level up. You start to see things differently. You start to learn fast, and you start to really kind of just develop even more, because most natural human tendency is to shy away from adversity, and that's fine. I'm all about not being crazy and picking a fight that you can't
Well, that's what
win.
they say. Most humans are, they go towards pleasure and away from pain. That's what 90% of human interaction is.
It's totally true, and I get it. But for the purpose of this discussion too, like if you want something to win, whether it's a mission overseas or a company, you have to make that thing work. And what that's going
Hmm.
to require is doing things that you hate, doing things that you don't like, and also being open to not understanding why you're doing something as well. That's another parallel. It's like, I know I have to face this demon. I know I have to face this thing. It's not going to go away. You know, I have to fix this thing. Okay. Maybe get a bad review on your product, or, this actually happened to me. The same day my wife told me she was pregnant was the same day that one of my business partners said, "It's not like I'm leaving. I already left. I left all my stuff in the office." And so it was like 2 months after opening the company. And when you get like gut punches like that, right? Not only like it's a blessing to say, "Yeah, great," like, we're going to have this baby. That's great. But it's kind of a double whammy. Kids are going to be expensive. You got to provide for that or somebody. And then also too, like we just lost a critical member of our team. And so the cash cow I thought the brewer is going to be is now in jeopardy. And those,
Hmm.
those things they're emotional, they're heavy. But that's the key right there, is like that may be just one example of like many that you can go through, but that's the point where it's important to stick with that, push into that, because if you just think that the problem's going to solve itself, it's just not.
Well, also just not going into that emotional panic response of like everything's falling apart. So it's sitting back and thinking, all right, what do we still have? How can we resolve this? What are our options? What's the best option moving forward? It's that
Yep.
same stuff that all three of us got drilled into us. Like, all right, here's your basic contingency plans for the operation. We could
Yep.
literally spend all week coming up with more and more contingencies of what could happen. But the whole point of it is just get the brain working, come up with some ideas, and then when things do go wrong, you've already worked through what some of the options could be, and now you're just piecemealing them together instead of coming up with everything new on the spot.
Yeah, and the benefit too is, and I've seen it from because we've been in business since 2017. I've seen a lot of companies fail, and I've seen a lot of companies that those same companies could have been massively successful. But and even like that scenario with one of those members, I could have blamed him. I could have just said like, okay, it's your fault. But what I've learned is like, it's just like, that's on me. That was my fault. I have to take ownership of that. Okay. And I would actually ask at the beginning of our company, like why some employees would leave, and they would tell me. And I would say, I really appreciate your honesty. Like, I need to get better. I need to get
Hmm.
better. I need to get better. I need to fix this. I need to fix this. So that's that point of like pushing into the things that you hate to do. But every time you do that, it's a pound of effort that's going to yield maybe a gram or an ounce of, just like sustainable like growth after that. But those pounds and those ounces, they add up every time you like face that. And a lot of the companies that have failed that I've known, there's been dozens of them. It usually comes down to the people, the guys that are in it, whether it's like an argument over the ownership or blaming somebody, or just not fixing the problems that are happening, and which is surprising because they got something great, and they've also raised a ton of people's money to do it.
Hmm.
And you know sometimes sometimes it makes sense to quit and to give it up. If there's no fighting chance of winning, why fight? I get it, I understand that. But if you like are open to what you don't know, because I mean we think we're very smart, but there's a massive world and universe out there that we know very, very, very little of, right? And if you're open to pushing yourself into just trying to understand something that you might not understand, I mean, those little steps get you up the rung, and then also explore opportunities later to get financing, to attract the right teammates, to have, employee retention, and then also like be able to sleep at night with your head held high, because like you're not nothing's worse, and you've seen this. It's like the thick of it in Hell Week too, when everybody's screaming at each other and like you're just
Uh,
like
Eating
nobody's
each other.
happy.
It's Lord of the Flies out there. Everyone's trying to blame everyone for everything else.
Yeah, and you almost have an advantage because you've seen like holy smokes that yeah, like, but a lot of people haven't gone through something like that, and it doesn't have to be Hell Week, but it's like when you lose yourself, it's training. You're like, I'd
Hmm.
rather lose myself here, learn this lesson, and incorporate it, control my emotions, and then keep building something. Same thing in entrepreneurship. When the money runs out, or that's typically when people lose their minds. But there's also all the other problems too. So that's where you just have to breathe, step back. What am I not seeing? Okay, I can't see it yet, but what can I be doing actively to try to solve the problem?
Hmm.
And it doesn't take an MBA. It doesn't take a bachelor's degree in business. It just takes effort.
For sure.
You just got to be
So,
too dumb to quit.
so what's on for that's truth of life. So what's on the horizon with Protector Brewery? What do you guys got for the next 5-10 year plan?
Yeah, so we've got this new build out downtown. We just named it. We're gonna call
Downtown San Diego, just so anyone else
yeah,
listening not in the area.
yeah. And I'll send you the render of it too and the location, but it's at the David Intercontinental Hotel.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, right next to that is Springfield Suites Marriott. So you got 800 hotel rooms above you. It's right on the bayfront. It's about 150 yards from the bay. It's going to be a brewery tap room restaurant with an outdoor patio. And we just, signed the loan agreement yesterday. It's going to be $1 million project that'll be completed this June and be open. But we still have our main facility in Miramar. We do
Hmm.
roughly 30,000 beers on a monthly basis on average, which is good, but we don't make too much money because we give them to distributors and then they give them to retailers and they sell them to customers. So this retail location will allow us to be a lot more profitable because we'll make beer at cost and mark it up substantially at that downtown location.
And who are you getting for chef or running the kitchen?
So we're gonna basically hire a consultant, and this is what I've also learned in entrepreneurship: know what you're good at, know what you suck at. I'm not good at food. I figured out how to make beer and make it award winning, and like that's good. That's what made me have a lot more gray hair, a lot more problems. But for down there, we're just gonna have a 100 square foot pizza kitchen. We don't plan on making any money from the food.
Hmm.
Most restaurants, it's kind of their successful model if you do that, because with a keg of beer, you'll buy a keg for $200, comes out to like $1 a beer, and you'll sell it for $8. So most retail establishments make money off the beer. We actually control the manufacturing of our own beer. So we'll hire a pizza consultant to basically build the menu, and we want it to be very simple. And that's also another lesson of entrepreneurship: keep it very, like, don't make it crazy and elaborate. It's kind of like the In-N-Out burger model.
Hmm.
Make it a very defined menu, but make it awesome and make it competitively cheap as best you can, and make it great. And then we're gonna have 30 taps. We're gonna be able to buy and sell other people's beer. We're gonna have half the taps of our beer. We'll have wine. We'll have kombucha. We'll have cider. We'll have seltzers. We'll have coffee. We'll have root beer for the kids. And so, we're basically just trying to make that the best place for a family that's on vacation, to be able to stop in, have something for everybody down there.
That's awesome. That's a brilliant business model to expand out of the traditional just sell the cans and kegs.
Yeah, and
That's
honestly, like, our motto here is to fuck it up less each day. That's really like a good motto for us, because this, I'll send you the renders too and like the location, and it's great. It's going to be an amazing build out. To get the bank financing took the last 12 months, but we were able to check all the boxes to get funded by a bank, um, by doing the things that we discussed early on in the company. But yeah, no, like, it's just learning. We learn how the system is. I mean, we sold, there's 331 beers in a barrel. We did 1,248 barrels last year. It's a lot of beer. It's like over,
Math.
it's like 300 to 400,000 beers, right? But we also, like, when you understand how the infrastructure that works currently, we sell our beer to a distributor, they'll mark it up 30%, sell it to a retailer will mark it up another 30% and sell to a customer. So if we're able to bypass all of them, sell direct to the customer, we walk away with a ton of money. And the margin just skyrockets. So that's really the strategy of why we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll focus on building that out this year. We'll focus on that, doing distribution with our main production facility, and then also have a little retail here, but main retail down there. See how it goes for the first year, master that model. And then if that model does work, then we're going to consciously keep scaling distribution and retail, but just nice and steady, not be too impulsive to try to put another location somewhere just quickly. We want to take all the data from why that location is successful, if it is, but with the margins and the cost of it, the odds are stacked in our favor. Most retailers in that location are making anywhere from $2 million to $9 million a year. So it's pretty incredible.
Awesome. Greg, were you about to say something?
Yeah, who's your pizza consultant? I was about to say that's like that's the real hero in this whole story is the guy
Totally.
that got away being the pizza consultant.
Yeah. There's a few that we have in mind, but they've started or currently run pizza shops for the last 20, 30 years. And so we just want to bring somebody in, and it's more like this. It's like, bring the guy in because he's going to say, you got to have this. And then we're going to say, okay, that's the pizza. Then you have all the distributors of the raw materials for the pizza. It's like, okay, well, I know this is what you want, but we've got to work with these distributors and these ingredients and these cost constraints. And so it'll be a couple days of going back and forth. Working with chefs is like, working with like most other experts, it's a give and take. We'll just say that.
And are you going to stick with the, organic, sustainable, stuff with the ingredients for the pizza, or is that going to be a separate?
We're going to try to. Yeah, we're going to try to. So our facility up here is certified organic, makes it easy. So every beer that gets pumped out of here is certified organic. The whole facility is. But down there, we're going to put our beer on tap that's certified organic, and then label it as organic. But everything else down there, we're going to try to incorporate as much organic as we can into the pizzas, the products that we buy and resell. Hopefully we'll be able to get organic cold brew coffee on tap. But really what we've learned is like most bars, retailers, they don't really care that it's organic. It's kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
Major retailers like Sprouts, Whole Foods, Natural Grocers, of course, it makes complete sense. They love that product down there, and their customers do. But when you go to a bar, they're like, you're veteran owned, we care about that, and your beer is good. The organic thing, like, it almost kind of turns them off in a way. And I'm not saying that but I am saying this, like, we're fighting a war to kind of like just make the beer industry better. That's my opinion. If we're beating out other big brands that are conventional, and we have 100% renewable electricity here. The organic process, we have to purchase every ingredient from an organic farm. So that works for sustainability. Every chemical here is EPA certified to have a neutral or even a positive impact on the environment when discharged. And I hope that people will mimic it because, it'll just make not only the world better, but, it's like, hey, you can still make great beer and not have all these synthetic pesticides in there. You don't have to have all these traditional practices that do more harm than good to the environment. Germans have been doing this for hundreds of years, and most of their beers are organic to that standard too. So it's just reminding people like, hey, and again, like that's the fight. Like, as an entrepreneur, to sum that up, it's like, we're jumping into something that's saturated.
What's your niche?
What's your niche? And then also, how are you making it better, and how, like, find the customer that's going to value what you're doing, and also influence customers to try to switch to your product based on who you are and what your company values are as well.
Yeah. I've had a lot of people, they're like, it's really funny how many veterans, especially combat oriented veterans, are coming out and being like, I really want to protect the environment and have sustainability and do all these other things. And like, it just doesn't make sense because, you know, you're trained killers, you've done all this stuff overseas, and then you come back and now you're all about the environment. But I think what it comes down to is it's just ingrained to us to make whatever we have better than we left it. And that's just a way that we're able to do it. You know, like none of us want to destroy the environment. None of us want to break and ruin things. We had a mission that we got really good at, and we always wanted to leave things better than we found it. And this is just another way we can do it.
That you hit the nail on the head too. And it's, you know, I think you see how ugly the world is and how ugly people are and how it could be. And then when you get out, you're like, you know what? Like, yeah, I want to be a producer, not a consumer. I want to make it better than how I found it. And there's so many ways to do that. You know, it's crazy because you can do that in so many different ways. You don't have to make a product. It could be a service that's just, it just makes people, you know, people want to work with you and improve upon it, you know, and just the environment, just the vibe of the people that you surround yourself with. Those little things add up. And there's countless opportunities for to do that with any entrepreneur. You know, you just have to look at something and be like, okay, that's the fight I want. That's the next fight. That's the next race line right there. It's like, hey, like I see a problem with this industry, a problem with this product, a problem with this service. And that's something I want to spend my time trying to make better. Learn from the people who have done it before, and then stand on their shoulders and be grateful for the information they give you, be grateful for the competitors that you have, and then say, let's make this better. Really, our entire economy and, basically the Western world is built upon those kinds of principles. And if you could try to make things better and also try to help people along the way, even the people that are quote your competitors, I think that says something, you know, because you're not just in it, to be ruthless. You're not just in it to be, you know, it's not all about the money, you know.
It's not a zero-sum game. It's not I win and you lose. There can be, let's just build a bigger pie.
And for us, it's like if we can show other breweries that organic works and they mimic us, I count that as a win because it makes a huge ripple effect on everything. Honestly, the only way they're going to switch is if we win against them, or we're taking their market share, which is kind of the uglier side of it. But we're kind of wired to work like that too, where like, hey, like we're holding it to a massively higher standard. It's gonna it's gonna ruffle a few feathers, but you're like, hey, listen, like I don't want you to fail. I want you to adapt. And if you want to mimic the product, like here it is. And I think like a very good lesson of that is Elon Musk just giving up all of his patents on an electric car. So that way he's like, hey, we have this issue of sustainability. And yeah, I know how good I am at this, and I want other car manufacturers to come out with electric cars because it's not just about the profits of Tesla. It's bigger than that. So
that's a great way to look at it.
That's the stuff that's going to keep you going when you don't have any money, or investors tell you that you're full of crap, or bankers tell you, nope, I'm not going to fund you. So that's the thing. That's the motivation, right?
Absolutely. You got to have something to keep you going at the end of the day. Well, it's awesome speaking with you, Sean. Please let me know if there's, or let the audience know if there's ways they can get in touch with you, where they can find more information on you, what the timeline for your new location is going to be, and any other way that we can support you guys in your growth.
Yeah, definitely. Just check out our website. We're going to have another tab for our new location downtown. Veterans, first responders, if you come in, you'll always get a discount. You can see the retailers that we have on our beer map. So, if you want good, clean beer that's certified organic and veteran owned, you can snag it. And also, too, if there's any way that we can help with you guys and support your charity, there won't be a fee to like come here and like try to get started up with some kind of charity, or just a good place to like meet and greet with other entrepreneurs. We're linked in with the Rady School of Management, which that's where I did my MBA, and they really center on entrepreneurship, and their network is really good. They come out here every quarter, so you can actually talk to other guys who have started $2 million businesses. You can meet people that are just at the startup stage too. periodically. So, we'll try to announce those on social media and our newsletters as well. But we're going to be gearing up for this downtown location. So, but yeah, if it was me and if I told myself to do it or not do it, back in 2015, the answer would be do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're going to grow from it in ways that you've never realized. And even if you don't make it, you're going to be at you're going to learn stuff about yourself, and that's going to slingshot you to the next thing that you're meant to do. And that happens very often too. So be open to it.
Awesome. Well, Sean Haggerty with Protector Brewery, organic, sustainable beer. Love having you on here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate the time. I'll follow up and send you guys the render and also the location. And when you guys are ready, let me know. We'll get drunk together. All right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can even do one out in the Netherlands.
There you go. Get you guys out here.
Do the European beer tour.
They got great beer out there, Greg. I hope you're taking advantage of it too. All right.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, guys. Hey, thanks again for having me. I hope you guys have a good day. And yeah, I'll follow up with an email. All right.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.